All right, Steeler fans, it's Friday. It is the second half of the Let's Ride podcast, which means it's time for the All Betz Are Off segment with Jeremy Betz. Jeremy, welcome back. How's it going?
It's going great. It's been a busy week, but it's been a good week, and I'm excited that we're getting closer, man, to training camp. Steelers football is coming back.
That's right. I want to get your take on two things that happened amongst the Steelers. I talked about this at the very top of the show, gave my opinion, but I want to get your opinion. First, let's talk Tyler Matakevich returns to the team on a one-year deal. It's not moving the needle much, but what was your take on the actual signing?
I like it. I mean, it's a guy who knows the culture. It's a guy who has a defined role and who's very good at that defined role. And I think that if you're talking about just, getting better incrementally at the areas where other teams might overlook, being a little bit more efficient on special teams, especially now that kickoff coverage is going to be such a big deal. I think it could be a needle moving move in the long run if he can play at a level that the Steelers and the Bills are used to seeing out of him. Dirty Red back in the building. It doesn't do anything but help the Steelers in the margins, which is sometimes where you win football games.
Yeah, that's a good point. What about Rob King being selected as a new play-by-play guy for the Steelers? Not sure if you're familiar with his work at all, but what was your take on that?
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with Rob King, but I'm definitely excited. Billy Hillgrove is such an iconic voice, and the only one I've ever listened to because I'm just now 30 years old, and so he's been calling games since before I was born. So,
right.
I just think that if you're gonna, and I know he filled in a couple times, I think in 2019 for him. So we've heard him before. So I'm very excited for it. I'll be honest, I don't get a chance to listen to the live broadcasts on the radio a lot, or the radio calls, if you will, a lot as well. So I'm excited to hear him in the preseason. That's usually where I get the biggest taste, and then clips and snippets here and there. He seems to have a good voice for the job, and I think he's going to do a great job for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. I'm anxious to see him put his own stamp on it. Hopefully he does that. But, it's funny because the next time we have one of these All Bets Are Off segments is the Steelers will be officially in training camp. Like they will actually have a practice under their belt. So the dead period is coming to a close. What was your take on this lull? It was pretty much not a lot of stuff happened. Like, to be honest, I think a lot of people might have expected contract extensions or people expected trades and nothing happened. If you were to summarize, if you want to put it that way, what was your take on this mini camp to training camp period that we just experienced?
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I thought it actually went by pretty quickly this time around, and maybe it's just my own personal schedule being busy, but I feel like that despite there not being much Steelers related news, I think the team is sitting in a good spot. I think that they have obviously a lot to look forward to at training camp, and so do we as fans. There's going to be so much decided over the course of the next 3 to 4 weeks, and it's really intriguing to see all the moves that they made very early in the stretch. We're used to a Steelers team that kind of makes moves as the offseason progresses, and instead the Steelers were very active early. They took care of a lot of their needs early, and despite not being able to land so far the big swing at wide receiver that they've been trying to make, they've been active in that regard as well, as you've reported from our source, as we've seen across the NFL landscape just over the past few weeks. I think despite it being quiet for the Pittsburgh Steelers, it could actually be a good thing as we get into the national media is going to run with the quarterback controversy, and we kind of know that there's not really one right now. So all that plays into it, but getting to hear from guys now like Najee Harris that we haven't heard from all offseason, getting to see what this wide receiver room looks like, how this defense shapes up in the secondary, how these linebackers come together, it's all going to be fascinating.
It is. And so it's hard to believe. I agree with you. I think it did go by quickly. And I think that really you're looking at this upcoming training camp, and there are a lot of storylines coming out. And when you're thinking about positionally from a team or organizational standpoint, what are some of the storylines you're looking forward to seeing kind of play out at St. Vincent College?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about it already, but I think the biggest one for me is how does this offensive line shake out? because I think that's going to be the most impactful thing for the offense. Where does Broderick Jones land? Do they trust Troy Fautanu to start right away? Where are they going to put Dan Moore Jr. if they do put Broderick Jones on the left side? I mean, there's so many questions here, and you've got the battle at center. I know a lot of people kind of foregone conclusion that Zach Frazier's just going to be handed that job eventually. I'm not so sure about that. The Steelers are not your typical team where they draft a guy to fill a hole and then they just plug him in the hole. There's going to be a period here where we see what Nate Herbig can do, where we see what maybe Ryan McCollum can do here as well as a veteran on this team. And Zach Frazier is going to work into that. But how this offensive line shakes out to me is storyline number one. And that comes even knowing that Justin Fields and Russell Wilson are in the backfield handling every snap. So it's going to be intriguing how that plays out. I also want to see how much the Steelers shed light on what maybe a Justin Fields package could be during training camp. I'm sure they're going to keep a lot of that under wraps. But to me, it's the offensive line, Jeff. That's the storyline of camp.
Wow. And I think you're right. You know, you look at the additions made there, and man, if Frazier could step up and Frazier could be that guy from week one, and they don't have to rely on Nate Herbig at all, that would be huge. That would be really, really huge. And then I think that we all expect, at least I do, I expect Fautanu to not start in week one. I expect Dan Moore at left, and I expect Broderick Jones at right. But my question is, and I want to get your take as well, do you think that if that is the approach, that would be to the detriment of Broderick Jones? If you view Broderick Jones as being your left tackle of the future, and Omar Khan has openly stated that is his plan, at least as a general manager, wouldn't it be smart to say, look, he's the left tackle? And maybe they do this, so it's not a condescending comment towards the Steelers, that Fautanu and Dan Moore are going to battle it out of right and Broderick Jones is your left. Wouldn't that make sense to you?
That is really the only thing that makes sense to me. And that's why it's so intriguing how the Steelers will do this, because they're not, like I said, that team that just plugs in the guy that you drafted for that spot. You know, they work up to it. But this is a unique situation. And for Broderick Jones, I think it's absolutely imperative that the team puts him at the position they want him to play long-term as quickly as possible. I think that that's how he grows in the league. That's how he learns. That's how he improves. And I just don't know what you're doing for continuity and kind of the gel factor of the offensive line, if you will, if you're going to just make that swap later on in the season anyway, de facto, then just go ahead and do it now. Put the guy in at left tackle, see what he can do. If he struggles, then you have a fallback plan that you can go to. But I mean, there's got to become a point where if Broderick Jones is the better left tackle than Dan Moore Jr. right now, then you just put him there. And then if Dan Moore Jr. can't cut it on the right side, then you hopefully drafted a guy in Troy Fautanu who you think is already going to be better than him there as well. And then Dan Moore Jr. is either your swing tackle or you find a new home for him or you do something. But I think that it's the Steelers are hurting themselves if they don't commit to Broderick Jones as quickly as possible to that left tackle spot.
Something to keep in mind is that Troy Fautanu is an older rookie than what the Steelers typically look for in a first-round pick. For instance, Broderick Jones was 22 last year. He's 23 now. Troy Fautanu enters his first year as a pro at 23 years old. So he does have a little bit more experience at the collegiate level. Maybe that makes a difference. I don't know. Let's play a game that I usually do on the Steelers preview during the season. It's the over-under game. And it's just one. I just want to pick your brain on one over-under. I'm going to set the line at 1.5. So for those out there that listen, and I've had people on social media say, Jeff, how there can't be a half. Now, sacks, you can have a half a sack. But like, for instance, in this case, you can't have a half. Well, that's so that you either win or lose. There's no push. So 1.5 is the line I'm going to set, and that is trades made during training camp. Are you taking the over or the under for Omar Khan? Let's keep in mind, last training camp, the number was 2. Kendrick Green, Kevin Dotson, those shipped out. What do you think?
I'm gonna take the under. Maybe that's playing it safe, but I'm gonna take the under. I I don't know that the Steelers situation is quite the same as last year, where, I mean, Omar Khan was brand new at GM, right? He was weeding through some of the areas of weakness that he just wanted to cut bait, be done, figure it out with the next guys in line that were more of his guys, or guys that just had resumes like James Daniels and Isaac Seumalo, honestly. So I think that if you're talking about this season, though, the wide receiver position we've heard a lot about, I just don't know if anything's going to happen there. I don't know if it is something that they can work out to get an impactful receiver at this stage without just going to free agency for it. I'm not ruling it out, but I think that the Steelers are probably a little more set than they were last year, because Omar Khan's in his second year now running the show. I think they're probably going to err on the side of, these are the guys that we have in the building. These are the guys we need to work with. Let's get it done for continuity's sake. So much change on this team already. Let's not stir the pot too much more if we can't, or if we can help it.
Okay. I don't know if you said this. If you did, I apologize. You said the under at 1.5. So Are you predicting 0 or are you predicting 1?
I would probably lean towards 1, but I don't think they're going to make multiple trades. Okay. Even if it's trading away somebody for draft picks. Dan Moore Jr. is a candidate, I guess, if they feel the need that they can just move on from him. And then if you talk yourself into them trading for a wide receiver, then I guess there's your 2. But I just don't see it happening at this point for one of those. So I'm going to say that they make one move, one trade, and maybe that's somebody they bring in. But I think for the most part, they're set for sending people off.
All right, last question for you, and this is a news bit that came out earlier in the week, but I did want to get your thoughts on it, and that was the joint practice announced between the Bills and the Steelers. You know, some people say they are not fans of the joint practice. Things can get out of hand. Back in 2016, the last time the Steelers did this with Detroit, they did get out of hand. There was a big camp fight, scuffle, whatever you want to call it. And I think there was another one in 2014 with the Bills, the last time they did with Buffalo. Sure. So Steelers have kind of stayed away from this type of stuff. But do you like the joint practices, or are you like, let's just leave it to preseason ball?
I guess I'm not. You could shift me one way or the other on this, but for now, I think it's beneficial. I think that any chance you get to compete outside the building is beneficial for your team, to see where you're at, to see where you line up, I guess, with a squad, especially like Buffalo, who's physical. They're an AFC front runner by all accounts. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. They have depth and continuity on both sides of the ball. I think that it's extremely beneficial, and I get the more injuries. You could be prone to more injuries. You could have a situation where fights break out or whatever. But I think it's more beneficial than not for a team like Pittsburgh, who wants to see where they're at and see what they can compete with, and get outside that building a little bit before you get to the regular season.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. I want to give you an opportunity to plug all the stuff that you're doing, both at the Steel Curtain Network and Fans First Sports Network. I hope you have some articles coming out, because I like your writing work. And so what do you have cooking on all fronts?
Yes, working through my series. I'm going to hit it really hard here for training camp on stars and sleepers. I'm going to work on a training camp power rankings for the entire NFL as well. And then you'll hear me on all the shows as normal. Steelers Fix, the Draft Dynasty podcast. We're going to be hitting I believe it's going to be the AFC South this week is what we'll hit on that side of things. And we're doing stars and sleepers for fantasy as well on that show. And then the Steelers Q&A, man, it's growing. We're having a good time out there. I have a guest on most every week, and it's just a lot of fun. We answer your questions as a listener, so tune into that live, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, 8:30 on Sunday.
Perfect. Jeremy, as always, I appreciate your time, man. Enjoy your weekend. Next week, we'll have some Steelers football to actually discuss. That's pretty awesome, man. Thank you for your time. Take it easy.
Have a good one, Jeff.
See ya.